Hello and what's up everyone, Thunderbob here, and tonight we're going to be talking about the Steam Deck. So I've had two Steam Decks in my house, one for me and one for my wife, for about 2 months now, and I put a lot of time into this device. It's really been our primary gaming device during that time. I took it on a business trip for a full week and used it exclusively during that time, and I think I've got a good opinion, a good amount of time built up on the device to be able to tell you if it's worth picking one of these up and why you should do so. So we're going to get right into that. Now, this isn't going to be super in-depth on the technical aspects and on like benchmarks. I have some videos out there showing benchmarks in new PC games and also in emulated games. I'm really going to be talking tonight about my personal thoughts on the device, how it has impacted my gaming habits, and why I think that it's worthwhile to pick up for any PC gamer. First off, what is the Steam Deck? If you've been living under a cave or something, it's a handheld gaming computer with more than 3,000 verified or playable Steam games and more being added every day. I'm pretty sure that's the largest launch lineup in gaming history. Maybe someone can fact check me on that. It's also a retro handheld, and with some easily installed emulators, you can play everything from the NES to the Switch. It can also act as a desktop replacement, though the experience there still needs a little bit of work in my opinion. The Steam Deck has completely changed my gaming habits. I'm a father, I'm a husband, I've got a full-time job, and previously my PC gaming time was pretty limited. I generally only play a few nights a week after my daughter had gone to bed, and when I was not hanging out with the wife. The Steam Deck makes it a lot easier to grab, put a few minutes into whatever game I'm playing, and then if I need to, I can just drop it, put it to sleep, and then with the resume feature, pick it up whenever I want to play again. It's really convenient. It's also easy to end your game, it'll save to the cloud, and then pick it up on the PC. So really you can switch between the PC and the Steam Deck seamlessly with whatever game you're playing. My wife is mostly a console gamer. She has some limited PC experience, things like The Sims, Prison Architect. But she was really impressed with the device when I got mine, and we picked up a second one for her, and it's become her primary gaming device as well, completely replacing her time on the Switch. To be honest, it's become my primary gaming device as well. Since arriving, I've put more time on this thing than my gaming PC, my VR headset, or my phone combined. I think that's the biggest thing. As a parent, it opens up a lot of options where before I might have 30 minutes, where my daughter's occupied with something, or, before bed where I don't want to actually go upstairs into my office and turn on my computer and get it all going. I can simply pick up this device, put 30 minutes in it, put it to sleep when I'm done. It's really convenient and something I think's been missing from PC for a long time. Now, on to the hardware and the controls. First off, this is a big device. There's no way around that. It's not very pocketable. You're not going to be taking this with you on the road in your back pocket. You're going to put this in a carrying case if you're taking it anywhere. This has the same screen size as the OLED Switch, but it really dwarfs that machine. Like if you put them side by side, I'll see if I can put a picture up here. This thing is a monster compared to it. Now, it is a 720p screen, and it's at 7 inches, really it's clear. I think at any higher, and you would have really limited the games that are playable because the hardware in here is not going to be able to push a 1080p or a 4K image. I think 720p is a good option here. It's not OLED, unfortunately, which would have likely increased the cost of the device, but also would have produced better dark and black levels. Now, the large size of this mostly comes down to the inputs on it. Like I said, the screen is the same size as the Switch, but it has way more control options here. So you got, 2 analog sticks, you've got 2 touch pads, you got the directional pad, you got the 4 face buttons, you got all these system buttons, you got 4, triggers here, and then you got 4 buttons on the back of the device as well. It has a lot of inputs. And, I've heard talk like, well, they could have taken out the touch pads, they could have taken out this and that, made it smaller. I think the large number of controls are kind of integral to the experience. There's so many different Steam games with so many different ways to play them that most of these buttons and inputs will become used at some point. The touchpads are great for navigating the desktop mode. They're really good for playing, games that use the mouse primarily, RTS games, Dota, and things like that. So I think most of these inputs will be utilized. The size also makes it feel like a high-end gaming controller. It's got, if you look at it this way, it's got some depth to it. It's not a flat device like the Switch is. I've held a Switch and this, right after each other, and the Switch feels like a kid's toy. This feels like I'm holding an Elite Xbox controller or something. So it fits just perfectly in the hand. And I feel like until you actually put this in your hand, it's kind of hard to comprehend. But the large size, actually makes it feel like a real gaming controller. Now, after playing with the Steam Deck, it's really hard to go back to the Switch. It feels uncomfortable and flat and small. Though the Switch is lighter. That's one thing I'll say. This is heavier. I've not found it to be fatiguing. Even after several hours of use, it's still comfortable. And the controls overall feel really premium. It has some of the best sticks that I've ever used on a gaming controller. All of the buttons are really responsive. And even though the placement seems a little bit funky, you got like the B button over here that it almost looks like it's like coming off the side of the unit. When you actually hold it in your hand and use it, the ergonomics are just perfect on it, in my opinion. Even though it looks a little funky and like at a glance, you're like, I don't know about this thing. Valve went through a ton of iterations on this, like hundreds of permutations and versions, and I think they came up with a really good ergonomic control setup here. I really, really love the controls on this device. Now, the unit has a sizable fan. On the back here, there's an intake right there, intake grill. Air gets sucked in there, and it gets pushed out the top. That does push out some warm air if you're playing a really modern, high-end PC game, or you're running like a Switch game on an emulator. You're going to have some heat on the back, and you're going to have some heat coming out of the top. That fan can also be audible, and some people have complained about like a buzzing or humming sound. It seems some devices have more noise than others. I have not had an issue with the two in my household. It does get warm here in particular, but where you hold the controls, because they're so wide and so spread apart, they don't get hot. Actually, they feel pretty cool. I'm not sure how it works. It's like black magic, but my hand doesn't get hot with this device, even though 3 inches away, that back plate is pretty warm. So it stays comfortable even in long gaming sessions. And like I said, the fan is audible under heavy load, though even like laying in bed with my wife sleeping next to me, it's not loud enough to disturb her. And you won't hear it over the awesome speakers on this thing. This thing has some of the best sounding speakers I've ever heard on a device. It's really clear even when turned up all the way, and it completely overpowers the sound of that fan. I only normally have it about halfway up unless I'm playing like alone away from the family, because it's so loud they won't be able to hear the television over the audio coming out of this thing. The Steam Deck is plenty powerful enough for new Steam releases. Games like Elden Ring, Cyberpunk, Resident Evil Village all run really well. I am curious to see how this will hold up on new next-gen titles that get released and how it's going to hold up over the next couple of years. Wondering if Valve will iterate on this device. Maybe we'll see a Steam Deck in a couple of years. But at the moment, I'm really happy with how powerful it is. I purchased the 256GB model, and I found that hard drive to be a little bit small for Steam games, as some Steam games can reach 100GB. The sweet spot, I think, is a lot of the smaller games and the indie games. I usually have a couple of large games installed and then a ton of indie games. So like my main game I'm playing, my main AAA game, and then kind of the indie games that I filter in there. I do have an SD card installed. I've got a 512GB SD card and the 256GB built in, and it has been large enough for about 30 Steam games and a few dozen emulated games, including Switch games. The fact that you can also upgrade the hard drive mostly mitigates the size issue if you're willing to open this bad boy up. So I really only have 2 concerns with the hardware. The first being the battery. which under full load on a very demanding game barely hits 2 hours. You know, you can adjust settings like lowering the refresh rate to 40, lowering the brightness and things like that. And on, you know, less demanding games, you can actually reach about 7 hours of game time on the very lowest end, something like Dead Cells. Now, I mostly play around the house where I have a plug available, so it's not a huge issue. But it does limit the portability of this device, like if you're taking this on an airplane, if you're driving with it. You know, it's going to limit how much you can use this on the road, basically. Though the fact that this is not a pocketable device kind of limits your portability, and you're probably not going to take this like on a train or something unless you're putting it in a carrying case anyways. My other slight concern is with the build quality. There's been, you know, enough reports of people getting them and having issues. And then like one of my devices is starting to make some odd noises. Like it's working perfectly, but like if I squeeze, you hear that? Like that's off to the side, like where my hand is. And during normal use, I don't usually do that, but I can do it repeatedly. And like down at the bottom, there's like some creakiness. Like it just feels a little bit flimsy. I read people suggesting to tighten or loosen the screws, that maybe something had been over tightened. I tried that, it didn't help. So just slight concern about the longevity of the device. Luckily there's a year warranty, so I'm like not immediately concerned, but I hope to be able to use these things for years, and in 2 months it's already kind of sounding a little bit questionable. So we'll see. It's working, it's not broken or anything, just something I'm kind of keeping an eye on. So next up, we're going to be talking about the software and the operating system. I've had the deck for almost 2 months, and out of the gate back in February, my understanding is there were a lot of issues. Like the software came in pretty hot and just barely got out in time. But in the time since then, they've put out a constant stream of updates. And when I got this device in late April, it felt quite refined. It felt, you know, really well put together. Setting it up was real easy. It was intuitive. And they've added a ton of features in the last 6 weeks, even since I've got my device. Things like being able to manually adjust not just your FPS, but the refresh rate of the screen, being able to add per game graphics settings, improve fan performance and more granular controls on the fan, remote play together, lock screen options, improvements to the docking and external monitor experience, though I think that still needs some work. Yeah, so the software experience today is intuitive, fast, reliable. You know, I can search for a game in the store. I can install a game from my library. I can move games between the built-in storage and the SD card all with ease. There's something in here called the Game Scope, which is really cool. It gives you a large amount of control on the hardware of the device and gives you some really cool benchmarking tools. So you can come in here and you can change, you know, your screen refresh rate, your FPS, the power going to the GPU and the CPU and all kinds of things like that. Just really, really good high-level controls of the device. I'd really love to see some of those features actually make it into the PC Steam client. I know some of that might be tied to Linux, but there's some really cool stuff in here that I'd love to see on my PC. It would be nice to have some kind of screen recording, though. That seems to be something that I have not been able to do easily without hooking it up to an external computer. We'll see if that comes down the road. And beyond the game mode, which is the main place, you know, you're running this device all the time, you can actually exit to what's called desktop mode. And this is basically like a version of Linux. You can install things from the Discover Store, install applications, emulators. You can even install Windows if you'd like. You could either replace the built-in operating system or put Windows on an SD card. This still needs some work from my understanding. I haven't tried it myself. Honestly, the experience is so good in game mode that I don't think I would ever install Windows here. That's just my opinion. Because of the large number of units going into people's hands, I'm also finding that there are a lot of unique applications being built with the Steam Deck in mind. Things like EmuDeck, which is a piece of software that will install tons of emulators for you, put like folders you just drop your ROMs in, And with a click of a button, you can even put all of those games as Steam icons in the game mode. It makes it really easy to boot up any emulated games. It's a really good experience. And the fact that there's probably going to be hundreds of thousands of these devices in people's hands this year, I think that will just improve. I think there'll be more and more software and more development by the community to improve the experience at the same time that Valve is continuing to develop the operating system. So I'm really excited to see what comes in the next year. But even, when I opened the box, it was great. And in the last 6 weeks, they've added just more and more and more to improve the experience. So, final thoughts. I was extremely excited when this device was announced, more excited when I put an order in and when it arrived. It really surpassed my really high expectations. Like, Valve is one of my favorite gaming companies, and they've really become a great hardware manufacturer as well. Everything about this device feels premium. The experience is really smooth at this point, even though it came out a little bit hot. If you're a longtime PC gamer, you probably have a ton of Steam games already. And if not, a few regular sales and bundles, and your library fills up like nothing. You can also easily set up things like EmuDeck or standalone emulators and play just a ton of retro games with ease. The controls are easy. The controls are amazing, and the software has greatly evolved since release and will continue to be improved with features and fixes, I'm sure, for years to come. I've only got a couple of minor concerns: the battery life, the build quality, and really the fact that it's hard to get a hold of these devices. We got pretty lucky. Me and my wife both placed orders months ago with the assumption that maybe she would want one as well. So we got really lucky putting in orders really early. So if you are on the fence, or if you already have one in order and you're wondering if you should actually pay for it, I can easily recommend this to any PC gamer, anyone who's looking for more options to step away from their computer desk and take the gaming with them, be it in their house, be it on the road, on your commute. This is a great device. I'm really in love with it. I'll probably have more content on the channel in the future, but it's really changed the way I play games and the way I see PC gaming. I'm no longer strapped to this desk all the time. I can take any game I want and play it here at this computer on my 3080. I can walk away and play it in bed. I can take it in a drive. I can take it on a trip. It's just amazing. I'm really, really pleased with the device, and I'd be happy to hear other people's thoughts on the device. If you've got one, if you're ordering one, if you're waiting on your order to come up, let me know. Drop me a comment below. If you do like this video, please like, subscribe. I do appreciate everyone for watching, and have a good night, everyone.